Welcome to Bible Study That Doesn't Suck. This is Pastor Megan in San Francisco, here live from my office here at Grace Lutheran. And we worship every Sunday at 10:30 a.m. where you can join us in person at 33rd and Yoloa in the Sunset, or on live stream at www.gracesf.com.
Hello, everyone. I'm Pastor Amanda from Central Lutheran Church, serving in Portland, Oregon, where our service is at 10:15 each Sunday morning on the corner of 21st and Schuyler. And we would love to have you come and join us. We are getting close to live streaming as well. So hopefully by Christmas, you can live stream our service. Perhaps you could even bounce back and forth between Grace and Central Grace online. So
Grace is central.
Grace is central. Ooh.
Happy Veterans Day. The end.
Blessed Veterans Day to everyone out there. Special thanks to those who have gifted their service to our country. Indeed, indeed.
Yeah, we're glad.
We're grateful.
Yay. Okay, Bible. This is Bible. I don't know why I'm being overly excited now. I was calm a second ago. Maybe my caffeine is kicking in, and I just had a little bit of yesterday's coffee. That's all that happened. So we have two readings from Samuel this week. If you are going to be in church and your pastor picks those options, or the secretary at your congregation doesn't have the flu and put in the reading about how the world's going to be destroyed, because who would choose that text?
I chose it by not choosing. It is totally on me, has nothing to do with my staff. If you don't look ahead, pastors, here's the deal. During the green season, you have options of readings. If you don't look ahead, you have no options. It will be what is assigned and printed in your bulletin, whether you like it or not. So be aware that working ahead, even for those of us who are procrastinators, sometimes could be beneficial to you. Because instead of talking about the end of the world, you could instead be talking about
Hannah. Way better text. It's from 1 Samuel, so you'll know that the text ultimately is not really about Hannah. Poor Hannah. It's about what's going to go on, how Samuel is going to be born. And this is a story that should sound familiar if you've ever been to a Christmas service before, or if you've ever heard of the other 7 women in the very beginning Genesis through Samuel, Torah readings about how babies are born when someone is not able to have a baby, and it's sad. One cool thing, if you are of the LGBTQ community, I always like to throw out stuff that's fun about that. I have written a paper about how the transformation from a woman who is not able to have kids to a woman who is able to have kids is like having a sex change in the understanding of the ancient world. Only reason I bring it up is because right now some people question whether or not trans people are fully human, fully able to have rights, or a part of scriptural text at all. Can God love us? Of course God can. But
absolutely,
people who are liars debate about it. And so if you want to read about that text, you can check out the link down here. I'm going to remember to actually put the link down there this time. Sorry, I got busy last week.
And you see the links if you are visiting our blog, not here on YouTube, but at justlutheran.blogspot.com. .com.
Yeah, so sorry if that's trademarked. I don't know if it is. I think you just get to sing excitedly about stuff. So in old-timey thought, they believed that there were 4 types of humans. What? Not just men and women? What? What are you talking about? They believed that, and this is sexist, so we don't believe this anymore, but this is what they believed in the text. So stick with me for a second, because you'll find liberation at the end, despite it starting in a non-liberated place. There were women who could have babies, women who could not have babies, different sexes,
whoop, whoop.
Because there were bodies with wombs and bodies whose wombs were not opened. Then there were men who could have babies and men who could not have babies, sometimes called eunuchs, because their baby-making parts had been destroyed, or they were gay. So 4 types of sexes in the Old Testament. If you changed from a woman who could have a baby to a woman who couldn't have a baby, or a woman who couldn't have a baby to a woman who could have a baby, I'm doing it this way because the idea was open womb or closed womb. If you transitioned from one to another, you literally had a sex change. That was the idea of thinking in ye old-timey, Old Testament-y times. So when Hannah transforms, her body is transformed. We don't think that this is true anymore. This could be a story of puberty. She wasn't able to have a baby because she was married so young, which was possible at the time, to then she was able to have a baby because she went through puberty, and that's how science works. It's possible that this is a story just about some of the real human hormonal longings that we have in our life. There are many women who have struggles about whether or not they do want a baby, they don't want to have a baby, they do want to have a baby, but they can't have a baby for whatever reason. They don't want a baby and they become pregnant, right? So this is a huge theme in women's lives. We're still talking about it today. This is not to say that one woman's choice is more important than another woman's choice, or that all women should have the same choices. This is about a particular woman who had jealousy issues. She was a part of a polygamous marriage, which was the norm in ye Old Testament-y times, another thing that currently is not the norm. She was jealous that the other wife had babies and she could not have babies. She very desperately wanted babies. And the husband, if you've ever been in a love relationship where you're like, why aren't I enough? And the person's like, well, but this is my body and it's not about my relationship with you. And so it's a very complicated story. It begins with Elkanah being like, I have some kids. I don't know. I don't understand. He clearly doesn't understand what Hannah's going through. And so Hannah's kind of alone with these really overwhelming feelings. And I love the description in 1 Samuel verse 10, where it says that Hannah wept bitterly. It makes me imagine that this is the biblical version of the ugly cry. Like she's so overwhelmed that she's like snot crying. Right? Yeah, I know, it's horrible. So she's overwhelmed by her feelings. She's distressed. She's so consumed and worried about this that she doesn't eat. So she knows depression, right? Because that's one of the symptoms of depression. So she's deeply depressed. She's sobbing and she doesn't feel like anyone emotionally understands what's going on. She not only wants a child, she wants a male child. So wah, wah, patriarchy. So she's a part of this same oppressive cycle. Like from a feminist lens, you could be like, well, she's a woman who only values herself if she has a baby and then she wants a male baby. Like you could have a whole Bible study just on that issue alone. We're going to trot past that. But know that her longing for this baby is misread by everyone in the story. So she declares, as some people have when they're at complete desperation, if I'm able to get pregnant, I'm going to dedicate this person to the Lord. You see this in TV shows where someone will be like, if you save my life, I'm going to join the monastery, right? So it's kind of one of those moments that is, again, misread 100% of the way that it could be misread. So she says, I will dedicate my child to a very strict monastic life where they follow God so strictly that they never drink and they never cut their hair, right? So it'll be an undefiled person who is following God. And so their whole life, if I get to have a baby, this baby's, I not only commit that I will be grateful, but for the whole generation of this baby's life, that they will also follow God, right? So a priest comes along who, like all of us priests, not Amanda, but me, just completely misses what's going on. Maybe it's almost Thanksgiving and Christmas and the pastor's like, I have to get this report in. Or 18 people just rang the rabbi doorbell and were like, we need help, we need help. But he misses it entirely. He tries to be helpful. He walks past, he sees ugly crying and laughing and all of this business, and he thinks that Hannah is drunk, right? So it's one more layer of people who do not understand Hannah's agony, right? Her husband doesn't get it. The world doesn't get it. The church doesn't get it. Will God get it? The answer is no. Not yet, right? Because in this narrative, God has forgotten Hannah, which is ridiculous. Why has God forgotten Hannah? God doesn't forget the people in Exodus, and they were so crappy to God that they like are making golden calves and all kinds of stupid stuff. This faithful person is forgotten by God, and all the unfaithful people of the world are remembered by God when they don't deserve it. Stupid, unjust story beginning, right? No one understands, and they're snot crying. So this is the beginning of what's going on. Hannah's response to this rabbi saying that she's drunk is beautiful. It's what you wished you would say at a party when you didn't have the right comeback. It's the comeback you come up with in the car on the ride home. She says, I haven't been pouring wine into my body. I've been pouring out my soul to God. I have been speaking vulnerability to the world. If you are ever a part of a group where people talk about the way to deal with the way you live or the way you love, and they make references to your life or love being like alcoholism. Yeah, this happens a lot. This has happened to trans folk and LGBT folk. This response from Hannah is a perfect response to memorize if you ever want to have something you can say to dumb people who compare your life to alcoholism. You can say, do not regard your servant as a worthless person. I have been speaking out of my great anxiety and vexation all of this time. I'm speaking from my vulnerability, you douchebag. Pastors aren't supposed to say douchebag, but I did, right? Let your servant find favor in your sight. And so finally this priest is like, oh yeah, you're sob crying. You're not drunk. God should be with you. That's what God does. God provides compassion. And so finally the priest is like, okay, you're blessed. Hannah goes home. She consummates her relationship with her husband. And only after that consummation, God remembers her, right? So this is not a story where God changes God's mind because of Hannah's feelings or because of Hannah's prayer. I'm going to say God remembers her through her sexual activity. Or maybe after all the steps have been completed, the last one being that she has sex with her husband. I don't know. But God remembers her, and her womb becomes open, and she gets pregnant. And that's how we know that God remembered her. That's the first reading. Boom. It's going to be a lot more controversial when I describe it that way than when it's read on Sunday. It's said a lot nicer. So let's pause at this point. There'll be a second reading that happens during the reading of the Psalms. That will be the next portion of what happens in the story. Pastor Amanda.
Babble away.
I mean, that's a lot, right? There's ugly crying. There's God only remembering us after we have sex. Ooh, there's priests getting it wrong.
There's lots in here. And even like I've been trying to find, there's a really stunning piece of music that's actually, so the next little piece that comes in the story, there's a piece of music that is a intertwining of Mary's song and Hannah's song, but I can't find a video of it. I've been looking. But the one of the pieces that I heard you talking about was where, Elkanah is trying to, when you have someone who doesn't like themselves and who is arguing about their own worth, and their partner is like, no, but I love you. You're perfect exactly how you are. Why is this a problem? And it's Hannah who's carrying this like real frustration and this real hurt that she can't get pregnant, not her husband. Her husband doesn't have that for her. And how you see that is in, verses 1 through 5 or 4 and 5, because he gave portions to his wife Peninnah and her sons and her daughters, and then in verse 5, but to Hannah he gave a double portion because he loved her. And then there's the piece, though the Lord had closed her womb. So Elkanah had a love for Hannah that wasn't about her procreative abilities, which is a different kind of relationship than is typically described in ye Old Testament times. And so, there's something here also that we can lift up about, I I think women historically, since ancient times, have struggled with their own self-worth and their own value. And although sometimes we say that women
Thank
find
goodness
their
we're over that.
right. So we say that women, find their value through what their men think of them and how awful is that and all that kind of a thing. And yet sometimes when our partners love us very much, we still don't access that because we have our own expectations and assumptions about what it means to be a person of worth and value. And for Hannah to be a person of worth and value, and to not feel the depression, to not, this is a character that many women can really resonate with. It has nothing to do with her husband that she is so depressed. It has nothing to do with what he does or does not provide for her. It is totally this longing for a child that fills her, and the longing for a son. And whether that's because of a patriarchal expectation or not, she was a woman who was deeply loved by her partner and who was taken care of by her partner, and she suffered from great depression because of a longing for a child. So I think that for many women in the world who have this longing, who may have really solid and good partnerships and marriages, but and maybe spouses have a really difficult time understanding like why, in here in the text, you even, for husbands who are walking alongside of, or partners of any gender who are walking alongside of a partner who's very sad about not being able to have a child, not only do they have someone to relate to in Hannah, but the partners have someone to relate to in Elkanah. Verse 8, Elkanah says, Hannah, why do you weep? Why do you not eat? Why is your heart sad? Am I not more to you than 10 sons? Right? Like, he's trying so hard in all the ways that he knows how to say, you are enough and I love you just for you. And am I not enough? Why is it a child that is going to make you happy? Why can I not make you happy? And I think that in marriages and relationships where childbearing issues are a big part of it, these dynamics of both partners are huge. And to see that it's in our scripture, to see that it's in not just our New Testament, this is in the Old Testament, this is thousands of years of history that we're talking about here. So if you are a part of a family that has this kind of a dynamic going on, know that you're not alone, and that there are people in the scripture who have had this feeling and have walked this path before. Now, most of the time in our scripture, it does end up that the sex change, as Megan described, it does happen, right? These people who have been barren become fertile. And so for those who don't have that resolution in their lifetime, who don't ever have that going from a closed womb to an open womb, or the inability to have a child to the ability to have a child, we have fewer characters in the Bible to kind of resonate alongside. But I think that the validation of the emotions and the experience of the deep grief and the ugly crying and the this makes no senseness of it all is here in our scripture. And I think come on, I'm doing everything I can for you, why am I not enough feeling of the partner is also completely validated in this text. So for those who are having fertility issues, this text has a lot of power.
Yeah, and know too that this kind of is a formulaic way of telling stories. Starting with, I had a problematic childhood. I rose above, hooray! And now I'm amazing leader in the world. If you want to see how this has played out in Ben Carson's autobiography, there's some interesting stuff going on around that right now. It's a formula, right? It's a formula of a really good memoir. It's a formula of a really good autobiography. And there's a reason that it's worked since the beginning of time. Whether or not there really was difficulty at the beginning, we don't know. But that's how you tell the story. Your birth was miraculous. Woo-hoo! You were destined for amazing things. You had troubles along the way. Amazing things happen. Here's the interesting thing. because we know what happens in the book of Samuel beyond today's readings, we know that the promise that Hannah made, her intention to love God and to follow God strictly, even though everyone underestimates her and assumes she's up to something. And this child never lives up to those expectations. So if God did respond because of Hannah saying, I'm going to dedicate my kid to you, we know that the kid didn't stay dedicated their whole life. Sexuality changed the whole thing, right? Samuel gets his hair cut by, oh, I love this girl so much. This is a story that talks about what happens, how our worlds change, how our stories change when our sexual lives play out. And so Hannah has a change, but a change is also going to happen for Samuel, and it's not going to be the best change of his whole life. And so this can be a space where if you wanted to talk about sexual ethics, you could. Probably no one will from their pulpit on Sundays, but you could.
You could.
You could. So let's skip to the next section, the first Samuel, the second chapter. This is a really fun part. As Pastor Amanda already said, it mimics, actually it predates the Magnificat, which is the fancy word for the song that Mary is going to sing when she learns that she gets to have a baby, which is not how I would respond to getting to have a baby without my consent.
Mary, the mama
Good
of Jesus.
for Mary. Yeah,
Just
Mary.
because there's so many Marys in the Bible. That was pointed out to me yesterday when I was having a conversation with someone. Yeah. Mary, Jesus's mama, sings a song when she realizes that the baby is an okay thing to having. I mean, think about it. It's not like at the very beginning. It's when she shows up with Elizabeth and John is getting all excited and she's like, Mary, you're going to be blessed among women. So like,
my soul proclaims your greatness, O God, and your spirit rejoices in me. You were blessed with love on your servant here and blessed me all my life through you.
Close.
Great and mighty are you, O faithful one. Strong is your kindness evermore. That's the Marty Hargan version. We own the rights, so I can sing it. I like to actually sing it when it's called a song. We don't know if they really did or if they were just being poetic or if they took the time to write it in retrospect. Or you can also imagine this is something some families, when they are in the space, when a baby is gestating inside of their mama, or they will say, we loved you so much while we were waiting for you to come into this world. It could have been something that was written in between baby wanted and baby received. Either way, it's a beautiful story. And what I love about both Hannah's story and Mary's story is that they don't just think about their own selfish desires. Hannah goes from selfish crying about a very personal thing that she wants, that some might think is selfish, right? To longing for justice and completion for the entire world. This shift is something that parents often describe as happening. The way that you want the world to be safe is different before you have children in the world than when you don't have children in the world, right? The way you want people to drive down the streets of your city is different when you have a baby that is in the back seat in a baby carriage or strapped in with all of their safety devices. I had a professor once who said that he believed that the reason that the United States would never get rid of SUVs is because of the fear that we have when we move to families that are mostly only children. When you only have one, you put it in a tank. And when you have lots of kids, you kind of, throw them in the back of the truck. Not in a bad way, but you know what I mean? You got lots of kids. It's harder to put them in a tank big enough for all of them. Same kind of love, but maybe a different safety standard. So this comes out of the idea of wanting the whole world to be taken out of their mourning. And this isn't just about justice coming to the homeless or money being given to people. I love this comment, verse 8. God rises up the poor from the dust and lifts the needy from the ash heap. So not only giving people the things they need to survive, but getting rid of their mourning, which is a much more difficult thing, right? I can give you stuff to replace the things you lost in a fire or that you lost in a natural disaster, but I can't very quickly give you the things that are going to make you feel safe in that house or make you stop mourning the loss of people you lost in those natural disasters. And this is a prayer beyond just getting stuff. This is a Hallmark Channel Christmas movie. At the end of the story, yay, the community in my small town is more important than my wanting a hamster robot Xbox or whatever things people like nowadays. That's all I'm saying. Do you have more to say on this Hannah prayer, or should we Hebrew it up?
It's cool stuff. You know, in the same way that with Mary, it's a very countercultural thing to be coming from a young woman. And if I could find that particular piece of music, it's pretty awesome because it takes the prayers of both of these women and it incorporates them. It is oftentimes sung around Christmas time, which is very interesting because people don't always think of countercultural, subversive, anarchist style young women at Christmas time as being, you know, they think of Mary, meek and mild. Mary was pretty far from meek and mild. She prays for the toppling of rulers and for kingdoms to crumble and for all people to have enough and for the rich to not have too much anymore. You know, she prays for absolute economic and cultural subversion, and Hannah's doing some of the same stuff here.
That's right. It's more akin to the prayers of the Occupy movement or Black Lives Matter than it is to proper people.
That's exactly, you know, I would say that these, you know, and what I love about that particular piece of music is that it takes both of